what we are just trying to do is to find out, interestingly, where is my... Oh, okay, thank you. Interestingly, if we take the first one, that is a definition of marriage, one would have expected a legislation like the Marriages Act to define marriage. But there's actually no definition of the term or the word marriage in the Marriages Act. I'm calling for the Marriages Act. It is not there. What the Marriages Act does is just to begin to talk about 3 types of marriages. The Marriages Act talks about 3 types of marriage: the customary law marriage, then the Mohammedans law marriage or ordinance marriage, and then in the part 3, what it calls Christian and other marriages. Of course, you can bring the table and the part 3 deals with Christian and marriages. Actually, it's not wholly 100% Christian marriages, because it is Christian and other marriages. Let me refer to that quickly, and then you can understand. We can understand what I'm talking about. The part 3 describes how you can celebrate Christian and other marriages as far as this is concerned. Just a minute, I should be able to get that provision, and then now I hope some of you attended. You will say that to some extent you have, if this is the law, then this is Christian belief as far as marriage is concerned. There is an intersection between this one, this and that, in terms of this and also this. Within our Christian Adventist beliefs, we 100% endorse customary law marriages. But let us be careful, because the type of customary law marriage that the Adventist Christian belief endorses is not exactly the same customary law marriage that the Marriages Act, the legal framework, endorses. I'll explain. At customary law, the marriage is potentially polygamous. It's potentially polygamous. 2, it is a marriage between what? Families and not individuals. Okay? So your mother-in-law has every right to come into the home and determine matters or issues. Vice versa, your father-in-law has also every right to come to the home and, yes, customary law marriage, or even an uncle of your wife or an uncle of your husband can come into the marriage home and then raise questions at customary law. So even though we'll say there's a slight intersection between the law and Christian beliefs when we come to defining the marriage relationship, it is not exactly the same. I'm emphasizing this because we believe that customary law marriage is as effective and as any other marriage. What we call the Christian marriage, and I explained this some time ago, is not meant for Ghanaians. I explained that. Let me emphasize that again. What they go through, registering marriages, going to celebrate, that you have to go and take the registered certificate, and then you have to do a wedding, and all those things. Even that, I shouldn't go to that extent. Forget about the wedding. The marriage under the marriage registered certificate or the marriage officer certificate, they were meant for non-Ghanaians. Yes. If somebody from Egypt comes to Ghana and wants to marry a Nigerian in Ghana, then they can go under Part 3 of the Marriages Act. If you are a Ghanaian, either you marry under your customary law. But if you are a Ghanaian Muslim, you marry under what? Yes. What you are calling wedding, you see, when we ran the seminar on marriage, I told you that when you go and sign the registered certificates, the law begins to follow you and expects you to follow exactly in terms of time and everything. Because if you don't meet the timings, the certificate may expire. But if you are within the timings and then you are celebrating your marriage, the law will follow you all the way from your house as you dress. When you get to the gate of the church, the law will stay outside and wait for you there. And if you note, we don't sign the register in the church house. You sign it somewhere outside. So when you are going to sign the register, then the law quickly runs in and follows to see that you sign the register correctly, and then it leaves. What you are doing in your church house has nothing to do with the law. In fact, it is an aberration on the law. The validity of your marriage at law does not depend on what you do in the church house. All that you may kiss the bride and all those things, the law is not concerned about them. But we are not so much on that today. Then the other thing that we have to look at is the fact that, you see, Christianity defines marriage as being a relationship between two individuals of the opposite sex. The law does not necessarily define marriage as a relationship between two individuals of the opposite sex. At least for Ghana now, we insist that it is a relationship amongst persons. So, if it's a Mohammedan marriage, it can be among 5 people, isn't it? 1 man and 4 women. Okay? And if it is a purely caste, it can be amongst 1 man and as many wives as you think. Yeah, you can be Solomonic. Huh? And I know there's a push now within even our own settings that the leeway should be given, that some people say they want to be like Jacob and others want to be like Solomon and the rest. In fact, some people are pushing for polygamy within our settings, but I'm sorry, I'm not one of those who will support that, because if you want to be polygamous, you have every right to go out and be polygamous. Because from where I sit, the Lord could have created as many women as possible. Adam, he got only 1. And even the one, I have a friend who always says even the one is problematic. And then, all right, so, yeah, so we see that there's some, even though there is an intersection, there is a little bit of a difference, even in the definition of marriage. Now, the other one has to do with provision maintenance. Now, in the marriage relationship, we often hear that, oh, the man is the head of the house, and the man must make provision for the family. Well, that is true. If we look at Section 79(1) of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, Section 79(1), the provision says duty to give access to the necessities of health and life. One, where there is a duty to give access to the necessities of life and health and life. A spouse is under a duty to give access to the necessities of life and health to the other spouse, who is actually under the control of that spouse. A parent is under a duty to give access to the necessities of life, health and life to the parent's child, actually under the control of the parent, which child is not of an age and capacity as to be able to obtain those necessaries. And then it goes on a guardian of a child. But I'm concerned about spouses. Now, if you read this carefully, and you know, Paul writes, he says that he that is not able to care for his own family is like an one, an infidel, an unbeliever. So here again, the law coincides with the Christian one. Believe there's that intersection there. And even it becomes an offense, punishable under the law. But note, here it did not say the husband. It said a spouse. A spouse is under a duty to give access to the necessities of health and life to the other spouse, who is actually under the control of that spouse. So this provision presumes that if, for example, you are the wife and your husband is under your control, yes. Sorry? Yeah, no, yeah. Good. That example. For example, if the man is sick and now he's under the control of, well, the control here is not sort of out of superiority, but the fact that the person is under your care. Duty to give access. So, yes, duty to give access to the necessaries of health and life. That which will maintain health and life. So if the spouse is under your control, well, we may, so that is one provision. The other one is Section 16 of the Matrimonial Causes Act. That one is even clearer. Under Section 16 of the Matrimonial Causes Act, it says, either party to a marriage may petition the court for an order for maintenance on the ground that the other party to the marriage has willfully neglected to provide or to make a proper contribution towards reasonable maintenance for the petitioner or a child of the household. So suppose you are a spouse, and of course, this will be, well, let me add in Section 2. It says, a wife shall not, subsection 2, a wife shall not be deemed to have willfully neglected her husband unless the court is satisfied that in all the circumstances it is reasonable to expect the wife to provide or to contribute towards maintenance for her husband. And for the purpose of so satisfying itself, the court shall consider A, the impairment of the husband's whether through age, illness, disability, or otherwise. B, the resources of the husband. C, the earning capacity and resources of the wife. And D, any other circumstances relating to the financial position of the parties. Good. Well, in talking about maintenance, you see, I started from the Criminal and Other Offences Act, talking about the necessaries of health and life. The necessaries. So, when we talk of maintenance, we are talking of providing those things that are essential to our life: food, shelter, and what? Raiment. Food, shelter, and raiment. Somebody will say clothing. Okay? Now, of course, it will always depend on the capacity of the spouse. So in some cases, husbands may even be, the law may expect wives to maintain what? Husbands. You see, depending on the resources that the people they have. And in fact, in some instances, the law insists that both parties take full responsibility for the maintenance of the home. And that is why you realize they talk about contribution. The law talks about contribution. Contribution to what? Maintenance, huh? Or to make a proper contribution towards. Each party is duty bound under the law to make a contribution towards. So if for example, you are a husband and you notice that yes, you are doing your best, you are contributing, you know your wife has some resources, she should be making reasonable contribution to the maintenance of the home. But of course, this customary position that it is a man or false Christian belief that it is only the husband who has to provide and keep providing. And therefore, as for me, where have you seen a woman contribute? It is wrong. Well, so what we have been trying to do, if you observe, there are some Christian principles that have been legislated. They have gone into various laws. And we insist that various... and let's look at Article 22 of the Constitution, National Constitution. Article 22 is even more, I would say, is clearer on this point as far as spousal property rights are concerned. Now, of course, when we begin to talk about property rights, we are thinking of not only, most people think of it in terms of immovable property, but property is property. Huh? Article 22 of the National Constitution, property rights of spouses. A spouse shall not be deprived of a reasonable provision out of the estate of a spouse, whether or not the spouse died, leaving behind a will. Parliament shall, as soon as practicable after the coming into force of this Constitution, enact legislation regarding or regulating the property rights of spouses. 3, with a view to achieving the full realization of the rights expressed in Clause 2 of this article, spouses shall have equal access to property jointly acquired during marriage. So, it says property. It's not talking only of landed property. So, if a car is acquired during marriage, yes. So, if a car is acquired during marriage, both spouses have equal what? Access to it. You don't say, my car, I bought it. Huh? Because if, for example, you have a four-wheel drive and your wife decides to use it to go somewhere, you don't say no. Yes, equal access to it. Because it was acquired during the marriage. It's a different thing, it was acquired before the marriage. And now even the question of contribution is no longer in terms of the fact that, the spouse should have given something to you to help acquire the property. No. So long as it is acquired during marriage, you have equal access. And equal access have been interpreted by the Supreme Court to mean equal what? Interest. Because equality is what? Equity. And equity is what? Equality. Now, this is where most men have it difficult with the law. Because they live under the impression that it is they have worked and gotten the money. And the law says, no, you have worked, but the woman was at home. That was her contribution. Anytime you came home tired and there was food on the table, water provided for you to go and shower and do all those things, that is her contribution. Yes. And so, even there's another aspect to it, Section 47 of the Lands Act. 47 of the Land Act. Let me chip that in quickly, so that restriction of transfer of land by spouse, except as provided in sections 3 and 4 of section 38, in the absence of a written agreement to the contrary by the spouses in a marriage, a spouse shall not, in respect of land, right or interest in land acquired for valuable consideration during marriage, A, sell, exchange, transfer, mortgage, or lease the land, or right or interest in the land. B, enter into a contract for the sale, exchange, transfer, mortgage, or lease of the land, or right or interest in the land. C, give away the land, right or interest in the land inter vivos. Or D, enter into any transaction in relation to the land, right or interest in the land without the express consent of the other spouse, which consent shall not be reasonably withheld. So if I'm a man and I see my wife going around acquiring landed properties, I will encourage her. Because the more she acquires, the more my interest in land also are. She might be laboring under the impression that this is mine. I am acquiring it. This law is 2020. So even most lawyers don't know of this. Yes, this law was passed only in the year 2020. And it has revolutionized everything as far as spousal property rights are concerned. So be quiet. Husbands, if your wives are acquiring, encourage them. Because once they have acquired it, they can't sell, transfer, unless. And from Article 22, you have equal rights to that property. So I don't see it. And this is very Christian, isn't it? It's very, very Christian. And so there is that intersection too when it comes to this. Let me wind up on the rest, and then you can ask questions. In answering the questions, we would get. We are almost done, because let's look at Article 18.1 also. Article 18.1 of the 1992 Constitution. Okay, that one simply says that every person has a right to acquire property, either alone or jointly with other persons. And that can be brought into the marriage relationship. You have a right to acquire property. Well, you can acquire it alone. But after the acquisition, the incidents of ownership and right to transfer will be different. Because then your spouse are married. Your spouse has a right to that property. You can't transfer that any interest in that property or sell it or mortgage it or whatever unless you have the written consent of the other spouse. And that is very, very important. Now, questions of inheritance. Inheritance, section 13(1) of the Wills Acts. Quickly, let me read section 13(1) of the Wills Act and then explain that quickly, and then there can be questions and answers. Section 13(1) of the Wills Act says, if upon application being made not later than 3 years from the date upon which probate of the will is granted, the High Court is of the opinion that a testator has not made reasonable provision, whether during his lifetime or by his will, for the maintenance of any father, mother, spouse, and that is where I'm interested in, or child under 18 years of the testate of age of that testator, and that hardship will therefore abide because the High Court may, taking account of all relevant circumstances, notwithstanding the provisions of the will, make reasonable provision for the needs of such father, mother, spouse, or child out of the estate of the deceased. Now, sometimes a man dies having made a will. And in the will, he might not have made any provision or reasonable provision for the wife. Now, if the wife thinks that, no, I have to go and bring an application that give me something out of the estate of my husband. Or the reverse, if the wife dies and makes a will, and you go and look at the will, the husband was not given anything, no reasonable provision made. The husband has every right to bring an application to the High Court to say that I should be given some of the properties well maintained during the lifetime of my spouse. And in the will too, he hasn't left anything for me. And I think I need a reasonable provision. And of course, most of us would have heard of PNDC Law 111, Section 4(1) of the Interstate Succession Act. Now, when a spouse dies without leaving a will, the wife and children will be entitled to the matrimonial home and a certain amount of provision out of the estate of the spouse who died. And therefore, your spouse can succeed you. It is interstate succession. You have not made a will. And so it becomes necessary that should be that. The law, and you see, the Bible talks about us leaving an inheritance for children, not so. But the law has gone a step further. It's even added not only for children, but also to take care of what? The other spouse. And I think this is a plus because, and if you look at the PNDC Law 111, the High Court Civil Procedure Rules provide that when a person dies intestate, first, the wife has a right to apply for the letters of administration. Now, in the absence of the wife, there are children, the children apply. If the children and the wife don't apply within a certain period, then family members will have a right to apply. So all we are trying to say is that the law gives precedence to spouses to inherit their spouses, which I believe is a plus because not only are we to love our wives mm, as Christ loved the church, and not only are the wives to be so submissive to their husbands to the extent that you would say they call them what? Lord. And you can imagine if your wife calls you Lord. I don't see why you should have a problem if your wife is what? Succeeding you. But if so, at the end of the day, um, yes, you will find out that there are some aspects of the law relating to marriage that actually you will say you can find within Christian marriages. In fact, Adventist Christian marriages. I love to deal with it that way because we are not talking about general what Christianity out there. I've always, the type of cases I've had to deal with as a lawyer, these, yes, more than 25 years now, sometimes when it comes to dealing with Adventists, my heart aches. And sometimes I've gotten to a point in some cases where I've had to refer them, the parties, to other lawyers. Adventists are so unforgiving. We are so unforgiving. And please, I'll send you out of the class. Don't mind. Don't mind. Don't mind. You see? And you see, sometimes when it comes to property, my goodness, when you say let go, lawyer, he can't take me for granted. She can't take me for granted. That is our main problem. That time we forget about Christ. And it is like, well, I've done. So these days I've developed, when Adventists are coming, uh, sometimes I tell them, oh, you see, I've retired. You see, I have grades. You see, and so if I can get a very good lawyer, and they go there. You see, because those of you who know me, it's not that I'm quick-tempered, but my heart, I get a bit emotional about things. So emotionally attached, you see. And so if there was one Adventist elder when he came to my office and narrated his story, for weeks, I was very sad. But I couldn't intervene. So I said, let's pray. Yeah, I just, I prayed with him, and I believe, I don't know how it finally turned out, but it was so shocking that I didn't want to be part of it. Listen, the spirit of prophecy says marriage can make or mar a life. Sister White is clear. Read the Adventist Home. There are many people who will miss heaven because of their marriages. Friends, what is it? What is it? And mostly, you will find out it's about properties. Properties. Money. Anyway, let me stop here, and if there are any questions, then we can. We can.
Okay, Elder, uh, when I raised my hands, I wanted clarification as to whether the law, well, the one that you read, I've forgotten, whether it applied to all. But because there are times you see that properties are transferred by the family, if it is in customary law or even the Christian or other forms, how will that kind of property, whether landed or others, be seen to be distributed among spouses? Where, in a situation where you say in customary law, it's not about spouse, it's about marriage. I don't know if it's about families. Don't know if I've made myself.
When I said the customary law views marriage as being between two families and not two individuals, is this: a man and a woman cannot meet each other and say, we want to marry under the customary law. We are not going to marry under the registered certificate. We are not going to marry under the Mohammedan's ordinance. When the man meets the woman will say, let's go to my ward family. And then when they go to the family, of course, the man will have to also take the woman to what? His family. And when the marriage is going to be celebrated, it's celebrated between the two families. The man's family would sit here, the woman's family would sit here. And the question will be asked: is this a man you say you are interested in? Or is this a woman you are interested in? You say yes. Are you sure? Yes. Louder to the hearing of everyone? Yes. That is a customary marriage. That's what I mean by it is between two families. But of course, Christianity does not object. Because how was the marriage between Jacob and then, yes, there was a party, isn't it? So much so that Jacob drank so much, the wrong woman was brought to him, and he went into her. Yes, and that was customary. And the next morning, he asked, what is this you have done to me? And then the father-in-law said, within our culture, our family, the senior one does not marry before what? The younger one. That's customary law marriage. Okay? Yes. So that's what I mean. But when it comes to family properties, and let me say this, please, if there is family land and you want to build on it, make sure there is apportionment of the land. The Supreme Court has now ruled that family land can be what? So if the elders meet and you say this is for Kojo, this is for Atenga, and this is for Kwaku. It loses its quality of what? Family land. But if that is not done, don't go and build on it. Why building? The family will take it up. And so, if that's the point, I always encourage people: don't build on family land. Go out and get your land and build. Yes.
Thank you very much for this second teaching. Mine is a question. Assuming I finish with the customary and I go on to do the Christian or the white wedding, which one takes precedence over the other? Because it means I have celebrated two marriages. Is that not it?
Well, It's, yeah, it's actually madness. Uh, you've seen I'm wearing a what? A smock. Oh, I wish somebody had a coat. You see, I could. You see, it's like wearing the cloth, and then I put on the suit, the trousers, and I wear the suit. Listen, the customary law marriage is as valid as anything under the law and under Christianity. In fact, it takes precedence over what this thing that you are calling a marriage under the. Because even there, if you note some of the forms, she was a marriage registrar, she will tell you. Some of the forms they ask, are you customary married? They would expect you, they will say, go and do the engagement. That is the actual marriage. But you see, this teaching is not acceptable to some pastors. It's not sweet to their ears. And I'm sorry to say, our church is no exception. Lots of pastors out there cash in on this. Of course, they tell you, you must even buy the suit the pastor will wear on that day to celebrate the wedding. Please, these are young people. In fact, sometimes, look. Let us teach Christianity. Let us teach Christianity and not these kinds of practices out there. Most of our young people are failing to marry. They think they must have this white man's. When I ran the other one, I explained to you. The customary law marriage takes precedence within our jurisdiction over this foreign thing. So I tell people, don't do it. It's unnecessary. The 200,000 you would use for that, go and invest it. Go and invest it. If you think you have so much money, why don't you give some of it to the church to do evangelism? You'll be blessed. The wedding is evangelism. Okay, anyway, maybe I'm getting to, some people say I'm too passionate about that because I didn't do a wedding. It is true. I didn't do, when they say wedding, they are talking of people. I didn't do that. I didn't even have the money to do it. But today, I praise God. I have a very beautiful wife, 5 children. The Lord has blessed. The Lord has blessed us. You see? So please, don't get excited about these white man's things. I was told a story. The night those 2 Adventists had the wedding, that same night, they fought over the payment of the loan they took. And that destroyed the marriage. Please, young people, don't be deceived. The customary law marriage is the best. And it is as valid as anything. Save your CDs. Put those CDs in investment accounts. When the children come, give them very good education.
Yeah.
I think that there's, growing up, I saw a lot of what we call blessing.
Okay.
After the customer, which I thought was very beautiful.
Yeah,
it didn't take time. It was like a baby dedication.
Yes.
So the people who do their customary, and then the Sabbath, they come. In fact, it doesn't take more than 20, 30 minutes.
Yes.
They just come in, they bless it. That's what they call it.
I hope my
Nicely.
pastors are listening.
And it was
Teach the
common.
congregation.
That was the more common thing.
Let us
But
go
now-
and search for the old paths
But now,
and walk in them.
anyway, it's
yeah, some other
so
answer.
there's a question I wanted to ask.
Yes.
The one that from the Land Act, where
Yes.
the
You can't sell, you
property,
can't
yeah.
transfer.
Does it, therefore, without in that particular aspect,
Yes.
property acquired during marriage,
During the marriage.
disposal, is it only for landed property? Because it's under the Land
Yeah,
Act. So
from
if
the
I have
way-
a car
yeah, from the way
and
it
I'm
talks.
selling,
That appears not to be covered.
yeah, so
It's
it's all
dealing with land.
land and landed property.
Interest in land, yeah.
Okay.
Question.
Mine is not a question, but a clarification.
Okay.
You have already said that under the customary marriage,
Yes.
it makes room for polygamy.
Yes.
And so, if, per what you are saying,
Yes.
though we encourage that one, like you said, after that one, you just come and we pray for you, and you are done. That's the ideal.
Yeah.
But because the customary makes room for polygamy,
Yeah.
even if the church doesn't endorse it,
Yeah.
and a member decides to marry in addition,
Yeah.
maybe the church will frown over it, but that person has every legal right
Yes.
to remarry.
Yes.
And so sometimes because of the threat of that polygamous potentiality,
Yes.
people want to go extra mile
Yeah.
to the customary, which limits, to the ordinance, which limits the potentiality for polygamy. I think that is where sometimes people want to secure their position because under the ordinance, you would have to secure divorce legally before you can remarry. So maybe we should be able to guide in that direction.
My quick response to that is this.
Okay.
Listen, and let's listen carefully. My quick response to that is this. Under the ordinance marriage, the husband has a right to keep a mistress. Yes. Yes. Oh. Yes. Yes. It's purely legal. It's purely legal. You can't marry her, but you can keep a mistress.
Okay.
Will we accept that in the church?
No.
No. So we can still keep the customary marriage and discipline people who do that.
I am not talking about the church, but I'm talking about the person having the legal lances to do. So because the spouse would not want to have such banter, then when I go
Oh,
extra
you mean
mile-
the other spouse?
Yes. As for the church, when it comes to
Let-
the law
let
and
me-
the
let me
church, the
tell you-
law would...
Let me tell you the truth.
Okay.
Let me tell you the truth. You can put as many restrictions as you want. If the man is not a Christian, he is not a Christian, period. Let us talk more about the person becoming a Christian
Okay.
than using these legal principles. Because the legalities, there are always ways to circumvent the law.
Okay.
As I've just explained. In fact, you can't marry, there's what we call bigamy. You can't have two wives.
Yes.
You see, but under the ordinance. But you can have a wife
And a
and
mistress.
So how is the woman secured?
Understood. Understood. Let's...
Yeah,
the
okay.
next one.
Let the next one, yes?
Yes. You made a comment where some pastors
Yes.
demand that their spouses to be
Yes.
should purchase a coat for them.
Not suit. Out
Yes,
and
suit.
shoes. Yes.
Okay.
Out there.
Yes. I just want to also say that
Yes.
the kind of members we have today,
Yes.
sometimes they are those who create that circumstances.
Anyway. Yes.
Because I remember I counseled a couple.
Yes.
Then they told me that I should wear blue suit. Yes. That is their colors. Yes. That the colors they have chosen for their wedding
Yeah.
is blue. So I should wear
Well,
a
you
blue
didn't
suit.
have a blue suit.
I had, but I told them
Ah,
they
then you
cannot
were like-
tell me how to do my work.
Okay.
And so
That's
if they
a
are not
strong
ready
one.
for me to wear what I will wear,
Yes.
they should get a different person to bless it.
Okay.
But you see, not everybody will respond this
We'll
way.
respond the way you are.
So
responding.
sometimes if you tell me what to wear,
Yes.
then you must be in a position to provide it.
Okay. Well, let's make room for that, isn't it? So it is not. We don't have to.
All right, next hand.
This hand has been
Yeah.
up for long. Okay.
Thank you very much. This very question, I think I should have the answer already, but I want you to explicitly answer this question for me. If you do the customary marriage, do you have to go and register it? I've heard it so many times.
It is a legal requirement that you should register it. Yes. You go to the registrar generals and say you want to register your customary law marriage. And they would go through the processes with you. But that does not, the fact that you have not registered does not invalidate the marriage. Registration is only for purposes of evidence that you are married. Sometimes people want to fly out with their wives and they want you to show that that is your wife. Huh? Yes. So you go there and just do your registration. It is not. I haven't registered my customary law marriage. Nothing wrong with that. But it's a requirement that.
Yeah, all right. So let's.
Yes.
Okay, so what I wanted to ask is what our brother just said, but
okay.
I want to ask a quick one. Please, does customary marriage ban the woman like sharing property in terms of when there's a divorce?
Exactly. Spousal rights. You have every right under the law to property upon dissolution of the marriage. But note, property or the marriage are not, they don't get into the pot for the sharing. The properties that go into the pot for the sharing would be properties acquired during the marriage, whether or not you have contributed. Yeah. Whether you have given financial contribution or not. So as far as it was acquired during the marriage, it goes into the pot to be shared. Yes.
A quick question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Those who got married before 2020,
Yes.
do these laws also apply?
Well, yes, because the law is prospective, even though it is not retrospective, to the extent that the properties were acquired during the course of marriage, the law would apply. Because the marriage didn't end before 2020. The marriage is still in progress.
And before I go, thank you. A quick appeal. It's nice what the law has done for women. It's very nice. But then I would appeal that the law also be updated concerning abusive words.
Okay.
So that as soon as my wife says something and my BP rises, I can measure as evidence and sue that woman. Because Obefa me can enya hwe metumi anya car ba makoma. Oh, meme.
Yes. That is.
And then remember, pa. Okay, hold on.
Let me. Excuse me. Let me say this. Let me say this. Let us remember. You see, even in the marriage relationship, you are still dealing with a human being. This has all the faults, all the shortcomings that you can think about. And I've always said this. There is no perfect marriage. You may even see them sitting, holding hand in hand, working together, doing things in common. That might be they may score, let's say, 92 or 93. It is not 100. Please, so long as we are on this side of heaven, these things will come. We have to learn to go to Christ. I agree with you. Many lives have been cut short by very bad marriages. It's a fact. And please, guard your heart. Because if you allow your marriage to kill you, well, I mean, yeah, because look, go to Christ. Complain to him. Yes.
Okay, Elder, thank you very much. On the issue concerning the traditional marriage and also the marriage by ordinance,
Yes.
I think that some people also feel that
Yes.
it is marriage by ordinance
Yes.
has or provides more security than the traditional marriage.
Security in what sense, if I may ask?
Okay, in the sense that the processes that you will have to go through
Yes.
provide some form of checks, perhaps. You let me finish.
Yes.
So I think that there is an attraction of a sort from that angle. Elder, I also want to say that as people living in society, let us not underestimate the power of society on what we do and what we do not do, although we are Christians. I'm making this with reference to people having to go through traditional marriage and then also add the dondo aspect of it. You know, the society is such that I think it's purely about society and what people will say that, oh, even her marriage was just traditional. Marriage was that traditional. She didn't get this kind of marriage. And therefore, I want to advise that instead of us saying or encouraging that, let us only do that one, because I am not sure this advice will be taken seriously by so many of our members. Rather, let us advise that people spend very little with the traditional marriage, because these days you go to the traditional marriage and you can't find a difference between that one in terms of the grandeur of it, the size of it, and then also the other one. So for me, this is the area I think we should make traditional look traditional, so that we will not add all those costs. Thank you very much. But then the last one is a question to you as a lawyer. I have heard many people saying that lawyers don't normally go for the marriage by ordinance. Is it true? I don't have the data.
I have just told you that is not meant for Ghanaians. What should I go and do with that?
So it is true.
I don't know. It is. Listen.
He is a living testimony.
Listen.
Yes.
Listen to me.
Of that.
Listen to me.
Yes.
Listen
So
to
I think,
me.
yeah.
If you come to my chambers, and then you ask me questions about this, and I tell you that, please don't waste your time, because the law does not. If you find a lawyer going to do that, possibly two things. The woman is older and richer. I might die soon. Yes. Or the woman is so rich and not very intelligent, and the lawyer cannot convince her that this is irrelevant. So he will go. He will even encourage his friends to come. The woman has so much money. Tell you this. Let me tell you. Elder, what you were saying, my heart was bleeding as you spoke. Because, listen to me. Society, so what? Jesus said, we are in the world, but we are not what? Of the world. We are not of the world. Listen, if we are to please the world, we cannot please Christ. The things of God are foolishness to what? the people of what? The world. Let us be careful. Let us rather encourage our young people. Let's encourage them and let them know that Christ is happy once they are loyal to him and not loyal to the world. You see, time ago, wasn't found in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, where we are pushing as Christian lawyers that please, we know that thing we are calling wedding. As Elder said, you can go and perform your customary rites, come to church on the Sabbath. After all, home and family, they will be present at the customary wedding. Then they will announce to the church that, oh, good news. Now we can tell you that Mr. X, Y are now husband and wife. Could they step forward and we'll pray for them? And I remember in Amakom Church, they will bring a mat and then some pillows, and the couple will kneel, and then the ministering pastor will come forward and what? Pray and bless them. Is that not beautiful? Our young people are unable to really, and it has become a competition. If they call it bridal ward, train, if somebody uses 10 people in the train, the next time somebody wants to use what? 15. And the next one wants to use what? 20. And the next one to use 25. Oh, please. No. Well, if you are very rich, I have told my children, for example, that if any of them decides to do a wedding, I'll be one of the first people